So, came out this morning and I took this off. I noticed there's another notch for the alignment bolt. So I just slid it around, tightened it up, and look, original belt, nice and tight. It's a little close right there, but this will stretch and go away. Everything's in. Easy as that. So this is a 2-inch diameter pulley, so I may look to see if I can buy a slightly larger diameter. Because at least for American cars, you can buy larger alternator pulleys for racing applications because, 7,000 RPMs at the crank is not good for an alternator. But even at that, I don't think that that's a problem. It's such a short run and so tight. And like I say, this is a brand new belt. It's not stretched. Once that stretches, it's just moving away from there more and more. So we will see. I think we're good. We got the hood bolted down yesterday. We saw that it would go in with all this various configuration. So I think it's time to pull the motor back out. I thought I might try the motor mounts seem a little wide, so I thought I might see if I can't just bend that bracket just a tiny bit, maybe a 1/4 inch in, because this side is sitting about a 1/2 inch up. That'll let this motor rotate down a bit, and we still need to go bang on that firewall where it meets the transmission tunnel to make that clearance. But I think we're good. Well, I'm going to pick the motor back out today, make the adjustments to the firewall and all that. Thought I'd talk about this for a second. This is a Harbor Freight engine crane I bought 25 years ago. It's been great. Picked dozens and dozens of engines. I used it to lift these columns when I put the lift in here. This thing's got a really long boom and the legs extend out. I used it. I picked up a body when I was restoring my TR4. Picked it way up in the air so I could get underneath, paint everything because I had the body tub acid dipped. It's been really nice. Well, a few years ago, the ram started seeping, so it would, not very fast, it maybe drop an inch an hour or something like that, but I just thought, get it done. Well, I picked up this ram at Harbor Freight again, but this is air over hydraulics, so it's got this. So instead of having to use the jack handle, which you can do if you need to, in all the conventional ways, but instead of doing that, like when you're getting the crane from all the way down to halfway up, instead of standing there for 10 minutes doing that, push the button and up it goes. It's been wonderful. I tell you, I bought it because they didn't have a standard ram, and I just wanted to get it while I was there. This was a bit more expensive, obviously, but I am so glad that I did it. I get so I have a transmission jack to use with the lift, and that's got a ram like this that you just pump by hand, and it's just like, oh geez, I wish I had a air over for that too. So anyway, today we're going to lift the motor. The motor was just sitting in here, so there's the only thing to unbolt. There's one bolt in the back of the tail shaft that is holding that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the car up and the motor, and so I can get underneath without having to run around on a creeper too bad. And take that one bolt out. So the engine's supported now. This is one of those self-leveling devices, which is, I really like that too. That was not very expensive. Watch the Harbor Freight sales and get it when I need it. So it's great. Just go like this. It changes the center of gravity. So right now we'll push that essentially backwards so that when I lift this up, the tail shaft to be supported on the engine crane, and then once everything's loose, I'll wind it back the other way. The motor will rotate, out it'll come. So the car's up, back bolt out. The engine's actually sitting about an inch off the front mount because the weight's under the crane. Basically, we'll lower the car out from under the crane, which is kind of backwards than normal, but this meant that I could just get underneath, get that bolt out. I'm too old to be using creepers anymore. Anyway, so let's see what happens. This mount's free. This one's still stuck a little bit. See if we give it a little adjustment. So the motor and the car are disconnected. Basically neither one's touching the other, they just occupy in the same piece of space, so to speak. So I lowered the car down quite a bit, and I've lowered the boom down just a bit because it's kind of a tall reach up to the handle. As you can see, changed the orientation of the engine leveler to the front. Motor's sitting at about 30 degrees. It'll probably have to tip a bit more than that. But I want to see if I can get the pulley clear of the front brace. So let's lower the car a bit more. Oh, now you can see made some marks. This is close up here and right along here, and this is mostly just a flange where they spot welded this all together, so that'll bend out of the way pretty easy. I'll probably push this over just a little bit. This side was way good, so that'll be the next bit. Okay, so time to put the motor back in. As Haynes says, installation has a reverse of removal. So we'll lower it in and pick the car up into it. That's both of the motor mounts landed, and I'll need to get underneath and put one bolt through the back of the transmission into the new mount just to hold it in place, and then I can mess around. But that won't be very interesting to look at the car jiggling from me moving, so we'll move on to the next piece of the video. Okay, so it's back in. You can see this was the motor mount that was sitting up before. This is the one that was okay, but they're both down, and it wasn't on camera, but I took this bracket off when I had the motor out, and I have a 20-ton press, and I just squeezed that down a little bit just to make this reset a bit, and I had to file the up a hole, maybe a 1/4 inch, because as it flattened it got longer. But that's got it sitting nice and flat, which means the motor's sitting a bit lower, even better. And here's the transmission. That's basically up where it needs to be. It'll get centered a bit better when I make the mounts proper. I'm going to use, there's 2 rubbers here. I'm going to do one on top, one on bottom. I'm going to make up a spacer. Just turn one up on the lathe and tighten it down, and that should help me get it to center. Then we can put the flange back on. I still need to make up a rod to come down and operate the shift linkage. But that's good. I mean, basically 2 hours later, and we're back where we were, except for a 1/2 inch higher there and a 1/2 inch lower there, and that's what it was all about. You can see daylight peeking through around the transmission there. This was all touching before. And that's just a line right there. I think it's actually almost a finger width. And of course this side has plenty. So that'll be it. It's starting to warm up. It's going to be crazy hot today, so I got a nice early start and it's getting warm now. So I'm going to just put my toys away and then go back in the house.